How do you do, neighbor? It's Berean Spirits time once again. The boys have gathered around, and they're ready for you. So join in, make comments, and study with the guys as they try to study as the Bereans did in Acts chapter 17. And now, here's the guys.
Welcome back to another episode of Berean Spirits here on the YouTube and Facebook. Folks, my name is Chris Peltz. I'm the evangelist with the Southside Church of Christ. We've got Josh Thornhill over in Johnson City, Tennessee with the Brookmead Church of Christ. Josh, how you doing today, brother?
I am doing good. I'm here. I'm good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear it. Glad you're able to spit those words out.
Me too.
Yeah, man. We've got Richard Dodson with the Kearney Church of Christ up in Kearney, Missouri. Richard, you doing all right today, man?
You know, I'm not yet, but I plan on being. You guys may not know this or not, but it's kind of a big day. It's National Pie Day. And I kind of view National Pie Day, like Christmas to a 12-year-old kid. So, I'm kind of looking forward to being a partaker.
Richard, it's pie as in P-I as a 3.14.
I don't really get into how you spell it.
How you spell it?
I mean, it's what it looks like on the plate. Is what matters.
Yeah, right.
Oh dear.
I plan on being a partaker in National Pie Day. And in fact,
on eating 3.14 slices.
Well, you were asking about my son.
3.14 pies.
You were asking about my son earlier, and he had to go do some work this morning at a place, and he's 10 minutes away from what's that restaurant where people go to buy the
Tippins?
No, the other pies, the
Cheesecake Factory.
Cheesecake Factory. He's 10 minutes from there, so we've already got our orders in.
Yeah.
And
the
only thing is
listening. Richard's looking for a sponsor.
Well, now here's the deal. The pie I like is like 1,000 calories. Can you believe that? 1,000 calories for a slice? So what I do is I cut it into thirds. And that way, you get it for 3 days straight. You can kind of absorb that a little better. But, I mean, I could eat it all at once. It's just, my lands, that's a lot of calories to be ingesting and, just after a meal, for a dessert. I guess I could make it a meal, but.
Dad puts on there, you don't get into how you slice it. And I was thinking, Richard probably lives by the philosophy that if you don't cut it, it's only one piece of cake or pie.
My dad, this is no fooling. My mom would make banana cream pie. And back when we used to rough in houses, my dad was a builder, and we'd rough in the houses when I was a young man. And we'd come home for lunch, and I would take one piece out of that banana cream pie, and my dad would eat the rest of it. I mean, that was dessert for him. He literally cleaned the plate of that whole pie.
And it's funny because he's a little feller.
Yeah, right now he weighs 155 pounds.
Yeah.
That's my dad.
I know.
He weighs about as much as one of my legs. But, I think at the top he ever weighed was like 180. Boy, he could put it away, though. Let me tell you, we worked hard. We worked really hard.
That makes a big difference.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
He gave me the love of pie. Let's put it that way. So anyway, yeah, it's Pie Day.
There you go.
Everybody get up and celebrate. Pie Day. Go get you a pie.
Go get you a pie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, let's get into our topic of the day.
Well, they got days for everything.
I know. Well, I know that's what's crazy. Yeah,
and I ignore most of that stuff. I mean, I don't even care about Christmas. I like Thanksgiving. I like turkeys. And Halloween's not any fun anymore. Because I'm an old man. But just shut that light off, and close the door. But
And eat all
Pi
the
Day,
candy yourself.
Pi Day, you can. That's a good day. I don't know who came up with it. I don't even know what the reason is, but all I know is it shows a pie on my computer screen. So there you go.
Yeah.
And
There you go.
Rita just said good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, Miss Rita. We appreciate everybody tuning in and listening. Hey, if you want to leave us a comment, you can go for that. And of course, if you're listening later, remember you can catch us on podcast as well. You can search for Berean Spirits on your favorite podcast app and see if we're there. We ought to be. Richard, make sure we get posted on those. Those are awesome.
Yeah, Linda said good morning too. I forgot.
It's Linda. We've probably got some others listening as well. Of course, Thomas, I think you said had already posted. So, but
Yeah, he filled in last week, did a great job.
yeah,
So,
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to be back. Had a good trip down in Austin, Texas, with the congregation down there, which was great. Good to meet with those brethren and be able to be encouraged and hopefully do some encouraging with them. And but good to be home. Good to be back with the work here and with you guys here on Berean Spirits as well. We're going to be talking about the value and importance of the local church and our role as members of the local church. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this particular subject is because a lot of times people really feel the need to, I guess we get caught up in the go big or go home kind of mentality. If we're not doing the most and the best, then we kind of shut down and don't do anything at all. And a lot of times, it just like with the body itself, the little parts are what keeps things going, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 12 really goes into how the church is made up of individual parts, but yet we are one body. But just as in verses 20 through 27, he points out that that even when you think of one as being weaker, it is indispensable. Each part is indispensable. The mouth benefits from the hand, the head benefits from the feet, and all of these things are working together and functioning and fulfilling their role to do the work that God has given us to do. And if one part isn't functioning, then it affects the entire body, right? If you lose a thumb, then the entire body is affected by that. And so I think it's important for us to look at and examine the roles that can be played within the local church, but also emphasize some of the smaller roles, whether it is some of getting things done even behind the scenes, and how important and valuable that is for the local church, and sometimes off premise, right? Off the, not at the building. We often think about just the work that's being done at the building. And as a local body of God's people, a lot of times the work that we are doing in order to grow closer to one another and really become that body that is functioning and working together is spending time together outside of our services where we meet at one location. And so I wanted to kind of get into all of that and really show the value and the importance of the local work, and why God calls us to come together as a local congregation of God's people. With that said, let's start with you, Josh. What some of your initial thoughts?
Well, I want to begin with just emphasizing that the local church is important. I know that there is a push today, and I think even it's starting to make its way among brethren. This idea that I don't need the local church, that I can just go be a Christian on my own. I can just go be a hermit of a Christian all by myself. But if I think as you look into the scriptures, you can see that that's entirely against what the scriptures teach us. And a good point that I think is worth being made is, Paul in Ephesians 3 talks about the church, of course, how it makes known the manifold wisdom of God and how it's part of God's eternal purpose. The question is that the local or the universal? It's both, right? You know, God did establish the body of Christ, which comprises all of the saved. But a part of God's plan is that that body would align themselves together in their given locations and work together to do the work that God has given them to do. And we find that importance is placed upon the local body or the local church throughout Scripture. You know, I think about the book of Hebrews. If you want a letter that deals with the importance of the local church, I mean, look at the book of Hebrews, and you know, look at the focus of the message. These brethren are discouraged to the point that they're about to walk away from the Lord. You know, you're going down the interstate, and you find sometimes you see like that the far right lane. It starts having those lines that are a lot closer together, indicating that this lane's going to exit, and it may be a quarter mile or a half mile, but this lane's going to exit in such a time. You know, you're in that lane. You haven't exited yet, but you're in the path that's going to lead you to the exit. And I think that's where those Christians were. You know, they hadn't abandoned Christ yet, but they were treading down that path. And one of the messages that the author gives to the Christians multiple times is that you need to lean upon your brethren. You need your brethren. Hebrews chapter 3, for instance, where he tells them, see to it, brothers, that there not be in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God, but encourage one another day after day, as long as it is called the day, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. He says you need to lean on each other and encourage each other, lest you drift away. And then in chapter 10, he tells them to stir one another up to love and good works, and to not neglect their assembling together. I think the point is you have this support network, and you know, really briefly, I think what you see throughout the first century is this culture where they operated on the basis of honor and shame. I do what I do because this is what society deems honorable, and I'm not going to do these things because that's what society deems shameful. Well, the faith and practicing the Christian's faith was something that the society at large deemed shameful. And so they're being maligned by the society, being shamed by the society. And so what they have to do is lean together, kind of insulate themselves, become their own community of people so that they can kind of insulate themselves from the shame that they're facing from the society. And it just underscores, although we don't have that kind of culture right now, it underscores the importance of your brethren and how much you need them in facing the difficulties that life brings. It's a blessing that God has given us like-minded people to walk through life with us, and we need to take advantage of it.
And just to go back to that Ephesians text, if you go to the very next chapter in Ephesians chapter 4, and real quick as I make this point, Josh, double check which mic you're coming through, if you don't mind, on StreamYard there. But Ephesians 4, 11 through 16, he says that he gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, some teachers. Right. Well, we know evangelists, pastors, teachers, those are going to be working within the local church. And he goes on talking about equipping the saints for the work of ministry, growing to maturity in verse 16, by which every part knit and joined together does its share. So certainly I think the emphasis there is on the local congregation, while certainly, the body is as a whole, we have a roles, we have parts to play, but definitely within the local church. And Richard, as I come to you, and I'm not trying to be facetious or anything in this, but real quick, I have a point to bring this together. What is your favorite pie?
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I'll just say cherry pie.
Cherry pie. All right. Okay. So if you just have a crust, that does that make a cherry pie?
No, that's a start.
That's a start. That's right. That's a start, right? There's something that is lacking, right? And so you got to add something to that. You got to add the cherries, right? You need to add heat to cook it. There's all kinds of elements that go into making a pie and putting it together and having that end result that is so wonderful to partake in, right? And that's kind of like the local church. As you start to get a local church together, you have the different parts that make it up. And if one part is lacking, then it's difficult to, look at it and really understand what is that? What kind of pie is that? How's it going to taste? What's it going to look like? All of those things go into, together to make the whole. And hopefully that, that point is understood.
Yeah, to me, you're describing a church without elders
That's part of it. Titus 1. Yeah.
because that's the first prominent thing that comes to my mind. I saw something the other day though about a church that somebody had posted online. It was a Church of Christ. They didn't think they were all women, and so I mean that could be a
Yeah.
big problem. So I mean there's different things, yes, that we have to have in order to be able to fulfill the Lord's work. But as far as local goes, that if you go to the Book of Revelation and look at the seven churches there, he addresses each one. So I mean, each one had its own problems.
Mhm.
Each one had its own praise, and so that just goes to show you that the Lord thought there was value in organizing His church locally, and so that's what we respect. That's what we do.
Absolutely. It is. And I think it also goes to show that, as we think about each part, each role that we play, we need to understand that as members of a local church, we are heirs together and joint heirs with Christ, right? Men and women alike. You've got First Peter chapter 3, verses 6 and 7 that, point that out, being heirs together. We're saved by the same gospel, washed by the same blood, have the same hope of eternal life and the glories of heaven. But at the same time, when, being heirs and joint heirs together, whether there is, whether there is, elders or not, right? It doesn't make us less of a Christian, right? If you have a role that you're not given to participate in, like not every man can be an elder of a local church. That doesn't mean that a man who can't serve as an elder is less of a Christian, that he has some type of smaller mansion in the glories of heaven. We're still heirs together and joint heirs with Christ and have a role to play. But nevertheless, there are certain roles that we are to participate in and certain roles we're not to participate in. Some things we're not good at and cannot do, and other things that we can excel at and we should do all the more. But we should take our part seriously, knowing that even if it is a small role, that it is one that benefits the local work. Go ahead, guys.
It doesn't really matter. And look, what's that expression Josh came up with? Oh boy, I'm living in the
The bib or
past.
the apron?
Yeah. It's bib and apron, right,
Yeah.
Josh? That little saying. If somebody has a mind to serve God, then they're going to come to church looking to do what they can do. And if you got confidence in something, you should be looking to do that. For instance, if you're a song leader and you got confidence in that, then you should be looking to help out in that area. And if you're someone who's a good class teacher, you should be looking to help out in that area. Whatever your strengths may be, but everybody has to have. Oh, yeah, that's a good comment there, Chris. Oh, Chris made a comment about my clock being an hour behind. That's I forgot to set that up. That's there for decoration, by the way. Uh, that clock was given to the church at Kearney.
He's in a different time zone, apparently.
Yeah, the reason that clock's up, that clock was given to the church at Kearney in like 1960, and it's been running. They replaced it. I asked if I could have it. That clock's been running since 1960. So, but I'll set the time. But everybody has a strength, and we need to, like Josh had said, we need to be putting on our aprons and coming to church. And if you just automatically gravitate to the very strengths that you have, then you're obviously looking for something. Somebody might like writing cards. I hate writing cards. Somebody may like visiting the sick. You definitely don't want to see me sitting over you when you're in the hospital. I'm not very good at that, but be that as it may, I mean, if you go to church with the right, frame of mind, you're going to be looking to be taking part in the work of the Lord's church, and no matter what role it is. And that kind of gets into something I hope we address, and that's looking to do what's lacking, because that may not be
That's
one of
right.
your strengths. And so I'll go ahead and say it now. Everybody needs to be ready to fill in where there's a void, even if it's not one of your strengths. I always tell the guys at Kearney, have a sermon in your Bible when you go traveling, because you don't know what you may be called on to preach at some place, some church you're visiting, and they may not have anybody. So you need to have something ready, even if you got to read it. So, we always have to be ready to fill in and fill up what's lacking if we go to church with that apron on.
And you mentioned a few things there anyway, when it comes to visiting sick and things. That's outside, right? The assembling together, like on the first day of the week. And a lot of times that's where we're going to draw closer and grow closer together in the work of hospitality. For example, you've got First Peter chapter 4 verses 9 and 10 that talks about being hospitable to one another without grumbling. And that's important for us, to take on that effort, that role. Taking a meal to somebody who's shut in sick or whatever. Sometimes little things like that. Sometimes those little things are what makes the biggest differences, especially when it comes to helping a congregation grow together as a family, right? Being a one another congregation, a household of God. And it's not just when we're at the building, right? At the church building, it's throughout the community and in our own homes. I think it's important for us to really take on those works. And you're right, looking for what is lacking, right? Knowing the needs that each other has. But having a song that you're comfortable, or you can at least get started, even if you're not a song leader. If something happens, and there you need, that is a need that arises. There's all kinds of things that can happen. But getting out of your comfort zone, right, and growing. You said, if you're a good song leader, then lead singing. Well, develop those things, right? And those are some things that can be developed over time as well, and just participating and helping in those roles as we can, preparing the Lord's Supper, cleaning the church building, mowing the grass, whatever it is. There's little things that needs to be done. And if we're not doing them, either it's put on one person to do everything, or it gets completely neglected, and that creates problems.
You ever gone back and look at your old sermon notes from years ago? I mean, I've gone back and looked at some of my old outlines, and I'm like, I can't believe I even preached this. It was poorly put together. I was just amazed.
Was that last week's?
Yeah. Well, it was a rough one too. But no, you get better. And in my mind, I think I've gotten better, at least at organizing a lesson. And when people ask me about that, I'm like, it's just you work at it. And a lot of times you don't even notice you're getting better, but you work at it and you do get better. And that can be that way with song leading, and it can be that way with anything. And a lot of times, compassion is something. Boy, I tell you what, some people have that gift of compassion. I know a sister. We had somebody at church that had a baby. Sister had a baby, and it was a C-section. So I mean, she was going to be laid up a while healing. And I wasn't even thinking, I was just like, I was announced. I didn't even think about it. And this sister, started making lasagna and chocolate cake and all these things to take over. And I was like, man, that makes me feel bad. I mean, you're doing all these things for them, thinking about what they needed, and
Yeah.
they were going to supply that. And that's that mindset of compassion. You can get better at that by being less selfish. And it took. It's like my mom used to say, uh, the best lessons are the ones I watch, not the ones I hear. And I think she said, I'd rather see a lesson than hear a lesson any day. And sometimes, women can't, of course, by the scripture, they're not supposed to be teachers at church, but needless to say, boy, they can sure teach a mean lesson, to the congregation by their example that they're living. And it can really hit home. And so, yes, I mean, there's so many things we can do just by being a Christian that, you can help other people, as Josh was mentioning earlier. You can help other people improve just by you, obeying God and doing those things and reminding everybody what they need to be doing.
Go ahead, Josh.
Mhm. Richard sent me a meme the other day that was saying that the church is not a cruise ship where a handful of people serve everyone else who is relaxing.
Yeah.
The church is a battleship where it's all hands on deck and everyone serves the mission. And I think that perfectly describes, what it is, the kind of mindset that we need to have. And I think Richard makes a good point as far as those things, as far as we might not think make a big deal, like making, helping somebody who just lost a loved one, making them a meal and sending it over to them. But God sees that. In Matthew 25, that's the very things that God points out on that judgment scene. And when he talks about the righteous, he says, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. And those are the very kind of things that Richard was just talking about that nobody might know about, but little things that you did to help and encourage and to think about your brethren. And God took notice of that. And by the way, in the latter part of that chapter, he notices those who don't do those things too.
Right.
And I think also goes back to 1 Corinthians 12 too, where Paul talks about the body and how we're all different and we bring different things to the table, kind of what y'all have been alluding to already. But we're going to bring different talents to the table. We don't all have the same thing. Not everybody's able to be an elder. Not everybody's able to be a preacher. Not everybody's able to be a song leader. But we do have roles to play, a room in the kingdom, and work that we can do. And just because it's not the biggest, flashiest thing doesn't mean that we're not valuable as part of the body. And I think, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12, he says that we ought to have the same care for one another in verse 25. I may not be able to be an elder, a preacher, a song leader, or whatever. I may be a woman, but I can still have that care for my brethren. And one thing I'd kind of like to, that I've been kind of learning lately that I want to share with y'all. The way that we talk to each other, just in a normal conversation, can go a long way to demonstrating how we care about one another. And I want to challenge you to think about your conversations with people. Is all of your conversations just, here's what happened to me, and here's what I did, and here's what I like, and here's what I want to do? Or do we spend time asking about our brethren? Hey, how's your week? It was great. How was yours? Or, if you're meeting somebody, well, what do you do? Well, I do this. What about you? What do you do? How many kids do you have? What's your family like? Asking questions to show that you have an interest in them is important. And I think that's things that's lacking, kind of going to what Richard said, is because we kind of get self-absorbed and we're only worried about ourselves. And so that care is not existing amongst one another. And I think you see that idea in Philippians 2, where Paul talks about thinking of others before ourselves, placing their interest before our own, regarding others as more important than ourselves. Those are active steps that we can take to do those things. And I think the context in Philippians 2 there is when those attitudes regarding others more important than yourselves and looking out for their interests before your own, those are crucial if we're going to have the peace and unity that God wants us to have within the local church. And so I think those are things we all can do to help contribute to the body, to make sure that everybody does feel like they are cared for and does feel like they have a place and does feel like they are valued as part of the local body.
Absolutely. Yeah. You guys, I mean, this is what I think so many people are missing out on. And Josh, you alluded to at the beginning, there are those who think, this is my church, right? Out here by myself doing all this, out on the road, out in the woods, or at home, backyard, whatever it is, right? Just all by themselves. And they're missing out on what God's will is and God's intention, for the local church to be together, to be that family, and to function together, to fulfill the roles that we can fulfill, and think of others and not ourselves. It's so selfish of people to think, this is what I do, right? And I think you're right. Try to count in a conversation how many times you use the word I as opposed to you or your, and find out just how much you are self-absorbed, right? Consumed with yourself. And because everyone likes to talk about themselves, right? Everyone likes to talk about their own interests, their own things, but really finding out about the interest of others and having that in mind, I think is important for us, and to be genuine about, getting to know someone, and opening ourselves up in a lot of ways, but really focusing on them and their needs. As Richard pointed out, recognizing, the need that someone may have depending on the situation or circumstances they're going through, and stepping in and fulfilling that need, is important, and is how a local congregation grows and is joined and knit together. There was a house that was built down here in Ozark, Missouri, that this guy contracted a company to build this house, and it can be seen from the road, and everyone who sees it is in awe at the end result. It's a magnificent structure. But the guy sued the company who built the house because he had a specific purpose and function that he wanted this house to serve. And when they mixed the concrete, there were certain elements of this concrete that were needed in order for this structure to fulfill the purpose of which he wanted it to serve. And they left out, or mixed it all wrong, left out an ingredient, and it compromised the integrity of the structure for the purpose of which he wanted it built. And they said everything was right, everything was good, but yet it will not serve the purpose that he wanted it to serve, because something was left out, something was left undone. And that's what happens with the church. It's not serving the purpose if we are not fulfilling the roles. And again, don't take on this attitude that, if I can't do this, then I'm not going to do anything. That's where churches really begin to fall apart, and pretty soon nothing is getting done, and everyone's wondering, why isn't everyone else working and doing all of these things? And as you sit back and watch, this is not a spectator sport, right? Being a Christian is not a spectator sport. We're all participants. We're all runners in the race. And that's what we need to be doing, is jumping in and being involved.
Thomas Thornhill, that Thornhill name, heard it somewhere, but he makes some comments. I think we ought to go here. It says the Lord's Church, LC, I think it's Lord's Church, is also designed to help us stay faithful in an increasingly godless society. We need each other. And then he goes on to say we need the Lord's Church to keep us accountable to God and others. And he says, note, if we truly desire to go to heaven, we ought to want to be held accountable. Godly brethren, help us do this. And you know, I was thinking that when he started writing these, I think that you know, was it Hebrews 12 talks about how the Lord disciplines us, or
Yes.
that he let, yeah. And then we started thinking about how does he go about doing that? You see, you know, like in 1 Corinthians 5, you see an example of church discipline. You got 2 Thessalonians 3, you know, where we're to withdraw from every brother who walks disorderly. And so, I mean, there's examples of, and I know we're not talking about exactly what takes place when church discipline is enforced, but I do want to go to 1 Corinthians 13 and talk about establishing love. And because that's what we've really been talking about is establishing love and practicing it and growing in it. And then when we get into what Thomas is talking about, you know, how the Lord keeps us accountable through each other, really, by our obedience to the commands of the Lord. And when someone starts to go astray, the Lord disciplines us, and he uses the Lord's people to do that. And that's, I think, what we're talking about when we're talking about withdrawing fellowship. Now, if love has been established, if love is something that we've been working on, someone like the man in 1 Corinthians 5 who was, you know, they commanded, he had his father's wife. They were told to, you know, he needs to be disciplined. And if when that takes place, you know, he's going to miss the people. He's going to miss his brethren. He's going to miss his spiritual family. And that's the whole purpose of it. But all too often, if love hasn't been established, if love hasn't been worked on, then, you know, well, la-di-da, you know, he'll just go on down the road. What's he care? And everybody else is going to feel the same way too. So, I mean, it's really important that if you're going to take the trouble to be a part of the Lord's church, a local congregation, then you really need to do it the right way and to establish love, because, you know, like 1 Corinthians 13 says, if you don't have love, you don't have anything. And you can grow in love and you can get better at it. But so many things, you know, that the local church is supposed to do revolves around us growing in love and establishing that. And like I said, if we don't have it, then nothing else is going to work correctly. And I think what Thomas is bringing up about, you know, the church being held accountable, the church people being held accountable, I think that comes right into play.
And I want to add to that, you know, I think one of the areas where many churches have failed is by their refusal to hold each other accountable. That's not a suggestion. You know, you mentioned 1 Corinthians 5. There's also Galatians 6 and verse 1. If somebody's overtaken in a trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one. You have James 5 verses 19 and 20. If somebody wanders away and you bring them back, you save a soul from death and cover a multitude of sins. You know, these aren't suggestions. These are responsibilities that we have towards one another to hold each other accountable. And I think where we've failed is we've allowed the culture to you know, kind of seep in to where we're not allowed to offend anybody. I'm not allowed to say, hey, that's not right. And that's not biblical. That's not at all biblical. And I think, you know, sadly, you know, what these people want to do is they want to hold certain people accountable, like the preacher when he makes a mistake, but they certainly don't want to hold people in sin accountable, especially if it's their own family. You know, it's a problem. It is a problem. God designed the church to be a place where we can be accountable to one another. And that helps us grow. That helps us draw closer to God. That helps save us. And so we need to foster that environment of accountability where I can go to a brother and say, hey, you know what? That's not right. And not get a, well, not get a nasty attitude as a result. And so, that's an important part that I think often goes missing.
And we need to be careful about, going too far. For instance, and I'll give you an example. It's good if somebody misses church. It's good to contact them and say, "Hey, we missed you." But a lot of times we'll say, "Well, we missed you at church," and they'll say something like, "Yeah, I wish I could have been there." That's fine. That's enough. You don't have to start interrogating them to find out the exact reason so that you can make a judgment on whether or not they sinned or not. And that all too often, that's what we do. We call them up. We missed you. What exactly was the reason that you missed? I mean, have a little faith in that person. If they say, "Oh, I wish I could have been there too," then okay, then you've done enough, But
You might ask them if there's any need that you could help with, not getting into all the details like you said, right?
if they rarely
Yeah.
ever miss.
Yeah, do you need help or something?
Well, I don't think you need to do that. I mean, just say, "Yeah, I wish I could have been there too." Yeah, you might. I mean, it depends on the situation, but
Yeah.
a lot of times, I've just seen people go like they want to judge the reason why you missed church
Mhm.
because they suspect you're up to no good, and that in and of itself does not foster a good environment. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm just saying that you got to be really careful how you go about doing things like that. I mean, you got to be making sure that you don't sin in the process of talking to your brother.
Yeah.
I would
Go
add,
to them out of
though,
love. Go to them out of love and believe in them.
Mhm.
Believe in the best that they can be. Believe in them.
that it's not our job to be detectives into every little detail of somebody's life, too.
Yeah.
We're- that, I mean, we do need to hold each other accountable, but I don't need to take my a magnifying glass and examine every detail of their life to make sure that everything is in accordance with the will of God. Because would you want someone doing that to you? But there's things that are visible. That's where we need to address things.
Yeah.
Openly visible.
Thomas goes on, he says, "This is the challenge. When people attend but choose not to place membership, they want the benefits without the accountability." Well, I don't know what benefit you're getting. If you're not working in the Lord's church, then, you might as well be out enjoying the pleasures of sin. Because
Well, I think the benefit that he would be referring to would be those who come in with a bib rather than the apron, right? That you mentioned earlier. People that come in with a bib are benefited by they receive encouragement, right? They are being built up.
I think he's talking about those who come who do not place membership.
That's what I'm saying. They're
But I
coming
mean,
with a
if you don't come to church and play, if you don't have a mind to come and be a part of the work, what good? I mean, coming to church ain't going to do you any good.
Well, ultimately, but they feel good about themselves, right?
Yeah.
They're feeling good. They're making themselves feel good. But that is a big issue because there are those who not only do they not want accountability, but also they don't want to humble themselves or submit to leadership, right? They want to keep their distance. They want to keep themselves at arm's length from everyone and anything and everyone around them, and it does hurt those around them. It does. I think it can hurt the congregation because they want to be a part of together, right? To be one body together. But when there are those who want to have these floating floating around, going around, not being a part of anything, first of all, it doesn't go with God's plan. Even Paul recognized, going back to Acts chapter 9, when he went to Jerusalem, he tried to join himself with the work in Jerusalem. And it shows not only responsibility, of trying to join yourself with a local work. There's a responsibility of the local work, who joins the work, making sure they're Christians, making sure that they're not just living in sin and just accepting the world in. But it does show that we are to join ourselves to a local work because we have those responsibilities. We are to submit to one another. That's a command, not
Yeah.
just submitting to elders, but submitting to one another, and taking off the bib and putting on the apron. And that's really where we get that full reciprocal action and benefit of the local church.
I agree. People try to come to church and they just want to come. For whatever reason, okay. I mean, we're not going to lock the door on them,
Right.
but you have a responsibility. If you're going to come there, you got a responsibility to be a part of that work.
And this is something I've dealt with a lot, and more so than really it kind of shocks me in one sense, because several places I've been, from Kentucky, to here in Missouri, where people would show up and they would be, good to have, the folks visiting again. And they would say, "Hey, I don't want to be announced as a visitor." I said, "Oh, do you want to join the work?" "Oh, no, I don't want to join the work." "Oh, so you're going to continue visiting?" Which one is it?
Yeah.
What's it going to be? You don't want to be announced as a visitor, right? But yet you don't want to join the work. You can't have it both ways. And
Not with the
so-
Lord, you can't. I mean, that's not
right.
going to do you any good. I mean, you're get busy, take on some responsibility in the Lord, and get busy.
Yeah.
And I don't even understand the mindset. I just want to float in here and
Yeah.
and worship God and do my thing and go home. And that don't even make sense to me. Because you cannot serve God without serving brethren. You just can't do it.
Right.
And so, it's just that I don't know where that mindset originates, but it's not in Christ.
No, it's a worldly mindset. I mean, it's a selfish, and self-centered mindset. I mean, that's it, really all there is to it. People think they've got their feelings hurt in times past, and they're standoffish. But at some point, you've got to put God and His will, His work, and His plan, ahead of your own. And it's unfortunate. Sometimes it is because we've been mistreated. We've been abused, by brethren, right? They've done us wrong. People are not perfect. While the church is perfect, the people that make it up are not. And that's where, maybe we can make the difference in a congregation, and try to turn that mindset around, rather than just allowing, this abuse in one sense to kind of to continue to take place.
Yeah, a lot of times these people get, because they're there all the time, they get, what's my word, infused in and grafted in.
Unfortunately,
People just start thinking that they're part of the work, and that's no.
And that's one reason why, what we would stress, and we even do here, that if they're visiting, it's known, right? They're visitors. They're not a part of the work. And especially if they decide they don't want to be. I mean, if they're going to make that decision, then we don't want it to, we don't want any mistakes. If you're going to be a part of the work, I think it's important that it's known, right? You let it known. I want to be a part of this work. And why wouldn't you?
You remember Lloyd told me this. Lloyd's our father-in-law, but he talked one time. I guess he was considered being an elder, and he told me this. He said, he goes, "If I'm going to be an elder," he goes, "first thing I want to know is I want to know who I'm accountable for." And I'm like, "Well, yeah." And he's like, some of these people, I don't know if they're part of the work or not. So you want to know who you're accountable for. And so as elders should, be watching out for that.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Josh.
But Josh he had to
Oh,
step out.
all right.
It's just you and me.
Yeah, man. That's great.
And if I wasn't here, and see, there was a chance I wasn't going to be here. If I wasn't here, it'd just be you.
Right. And I'd have been left in the dark.
That's right. You wouldn't know. You'd be sitting there calling for people, and then you'd think you're off the air.
I know it. Oh, man.
That'd be funny.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. See, and yeah. Oh man, never mind. All right. That is something I think it goes to, for those who are members of a local church, why we need to, really have some self-examination for sure, but really take an interest in not only the work, but the people that we are members with. We're to be at peace with one another. We are to try to do our best to encourage one another, consider one another, all kinds of things. You can look up all these one another passages that are so vital and important for us to understand. But ultimately, it comes down to, the value of the local church. Here we are living in a community, living in a city, a town, a county that surrounds us with worldliness, with ungodliness, with sin, and understanding we're not alone, understanding that we are, we have others that are experiencing the same temptations and influences that we are, and having those around us to encourage us and build us up and to help us to keep from giving into those things. As much as we try and strive and think we can do things on our own, God doesn't intend for that to happen. He intends for us first and foremost to rely upon Him, but He also says to rely upon one another and prefer. Romans 12 verse 10, he even says not only being kind to one another, but preferring, giving preference to one another. And I think that's something that we need to strive and try to do.
Somebody said one time, you can't rock the boat if you're not in it. And if you want to have, another preacher told me once, fellowship is, fellows on a boat. They're fellows on a ship, and they're working together to get to a destination. And, what do they do with people who are stowaways? They get into trouble. So walk the plank, I guess. I don't know. But needless to say, if you want to rock the boat, you need to be in the ship. You need to be in the boat. And we all want to encourage each other to love and good works. The Bible teaches that. So we need to get in the boat. And that boat is the local church. That's what the Lord's provided. And if anybody has anything else to say on that, then contact me. And we'll talk about it and study it. But I mean, you're just wrong. There's no other way to put it. You're just wrong. It's the local church is what the Lord has established in order for Christians to serve God in. I mean, you need to be a part of it, and it's foolhardy to think that you can get to heaven outside the being a member of the local church.
Yeah. Any other last thoughts, Richard?
That was it.
Is Josh back?
Yeah, he's back.
Last thoughts, Josh?
Well, I mean, I guess just that we need to, remember that, the local church is important, and we need to be a part of it, and just kind of do our part to, be a part of the body and be in that encouragement to others that we receive from them. So.
Absolutely. If one part suffers, we all suffer. If one part rejoices, we all rejoice. And we should desire to participate with one another in those things. That's what fellowship is all about. Mm-hmm. Folks, we appreciate everybody tuning in, listening to Berean Spirits. And of course, remember to share it out with all your friends and family. Have them join the fun here every Thursday morning as we go live. And of course, you can always catch us on podcast as well. Until next time, remember to search the scriptures with Berean spirits.
Oh, I'm behind the times.
I'm telling you.
You know why I'm behind the times? My wife told me to put my order in for my pie.
Yum.
So I was sitting here doing that on my phone. Don't forget, guys, get pie. It's Pie Day. Take advantage
Pie
of
Day.
it. Well, folks, that's all for today. Don't worry. Lord willing, the guys will be back next week for another Bible study on Berean spirits. Until then, let the guys hear from you. Drop them some email at bereanspirits@gmail.com. They'd love to hear from you. Until next time, let's keep studying that Bible.